Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, our city needs more housing. Pretty much everyone agrees on that. But how to build it and how to make sure at least some of it is affordable, that has been trickier. Mayor Ed Gainey proposed a package of ideas last year trying to address this, including requiring developers to set aside affordable units in big new buildings. It was mandatory, and it was supposed to be his legacy. But now things have changed, and his office says he'll veto his own bill. I am back with Deputy Mayor Jake Pawlak for his take on how we got here. It's Wednesday, October 22nd. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Jake Pawlak, welcome back.
Thank you.
So let's talk about housing. I know Pittsburgh doesn't have enough. We've talked so much about that. And as we are recording this, City Councilwoman Erika Strassburger is supposed to be introducing an amendment to the mayor's signature inclusionary zoning bill. She wanted to do it sooner. That did not happen. It was sort of spicy as council meetings go. And you said that you were blindsided by the process. What happened from your perspective?
Sure. So we had been for months, really going back to late May or perhaps early June, I don't remember the exact date, but around there, working with Councilperson Strassburger on attempting to find a compromise via amendments to the mayor's proposal.
Because there were dueling proposals for a while. Councilman Bob Charland of Southside and Oakland, he had a proposal. The mayor had a proposal. Charland's did not make it out of Planning Commission, but Mayor Gainey's has.
That's right. The Planning Commission gave a negative recommendation to Councilman Charland's proposal, which was a voluntary program. That'll be relevant in a minute. And then Mayor Gainey's proposal, which was a mandatory program, did receive a positive recommendation. Charland's proposal has since been voted down by council. It comes out of Planning Commission, but with a really high standard for number of votes.
It's effectively gone now.
That one is gone. Ours is on the table today. And so we were negotiating around what it might take for Councilperson Strassburger, who had shaped up to be essentially the swing vote in all of this.
Yep, the fifth vote, the deciding vote. Right. I don't envy that position.
No, not at all. But, around what might make her comfortable with voting in favor of a version of the mayor's proposal. And so we went back and forth, I think constructively, for several months discussing various adjustments we could make or concessions. And I felt we're pretty close, nothing, committed to or no certainty, but pretty close to having satisfied what we understood to be the things that she was most eager to see in order to find our way to support a version of our legislation. We had, made concessions around the length of the affordability period that would be required. So how many years something constructed under IZ would be required to be affordable, down to 35 years from 99 in our original proposal. We had agreed to more forms of alternative compliance. So the main sort of the typical case that you imagine when designing an inclusionary zoning program is a developer is building a building. It's more than 20 units. They have to provide one affordable unit for out of every 10 units they build. So in that 20-unit building, it will be 2. In a 200-unit building, it will be 20, right, 10%. But there were options to meet your obligation a different way in our proposal. And the main one was you don't want to or can't for some reason build it in your building. You can build it somewhere else or invest in someone else's project and have the units created there. We clarified that could also take the form of you happen to own another market rate building within a half mile of where you're building the new one, and you want to convert some of those market rate units to affordable units. That would be acceptable. And then we agreed to add a payment in lieu feature, which is controversial in the kind of policy world of inclusionary zoning, where you could also just make a payment into a city housing production fund that would meet your obligation, and then the city would award that funding to someone else or work with another party like the URA or the Housing Authority to create new affordable units that way. Maybe most critically, we agreed to changes to the city's tax abatement policy to increase the amount of tax relief an affordable housing developer would get for creating affordable units. We have a companion to the inclusionary zoning program in the tax code already that allows folks who are building at least 10% of their units at 50% AMI, so the same standards as inclusionary zoning.
AMI is area median income. Basically, it just means that you make less than you probably should.
Yes, I think that's fair. 50% certainly. The AMI, 100% AMI is the median income in the market.
And our median income in Pittsburgh is already kind of low, like by a national standard.
I think that's right. And that's exactly why we're targeting that population with our affordability measures. So if you build housing for people in that area of need, that sort of financial zone, in our tax code now you can deduct $250,000 a year from the value on which you're taxed for 10 years. That's our existing abatement program. We were proposing to increase the amount of that to $425,000 a year, which is actually, if you look at inflation, specifically in the producer price index for housing construction, that is how much the value of $250,000 has changed in the time since LRTA was established. So we basically said we will inflation adjust the existing benefit, bring it up to the value it would be today if it had been following inflation that whole time. And we will peg it to inflation forever into the future. So instead of being a static number, 425, it'll adjust on its own every year. And by doing so, we're saying that folks who are building affordable housing, complying with inclusionary zoning if it were enacted, have a guaranteed automatically adjusting amount of kind of offset to help pay for the cost of doing so. We thought it was a very strong proposal, and it was about a month ago at this point that we reached kind of a consensus around that final package and presented it to Councilperson Strassburger. She didn't tell us she wasn't agreeable to it. She didn't say she was on board. But we felt we had kind of reached the end of what had been a good faith negotiation, or we're pretty close to the end. We didn't hear anything back for a couple weeks, which, maybe was somewhat concerning, but not entirely surprising.
Busy time of the year, vacation schedules. There was a recess right before that.
Right. And then we were surprised to learn that she was introducing a proposed amendment that was not reflective of the compromise we had been discussing, but an entirely new approach to the bill that would convert it to a voluntary inclusionary zoning program, meaning there's no mandate to provide affordable units.
And I think that's the central piece here, is that Gainey's proposal would have been mandatory citywide. As of right now, there is a inclusionary zoning program, but it's only in a couple of neighborhoods, Polish Hill, Lawrenceville, Oakland, and Bloomfield. But this wouldn't be that. This would let folks opt in. Wouldn't change those where it already exists, but the rest could opt in.
That's right. It would be, on a project by project basis, a developer could decide, okay, I'm going to include the affordable units, and in exchange for that, get development bonuses, meaning they can build taller or put more, a variety of ways that they can expand the scope of what they're building. And there's nothing wrong with that. Our proposal similarly had bonuses for developers who were complying with IZ, but they had to comply, right? They had to have the affordable units, and then in exchange for that, we were also relaxing the limitations on what could be built.
And Pittsburgh's zoning code is a challenge, so anything that eases those burdens, I'm sure, is good news for developers.
Yes, and we felt it was a fair exchange for the requirement that there be affordable units. The problem with making the program voluntary, right, is it will, in our view, not address one of the major reasons why this type of policy is necessary, which is residential segregation, both by race and income, right? It means that developers are free to pursue 100% market rate projects in thriving neighborhoods with high demand that will eliminate opportunities for lower income people to find places to live in those communities. And it provides much more limited, if any, protection against gentrification, because in emerging markets where it's possible to buy land at basically a discount or to speculate on land values in emerging neighborhoods, and then when the market can sustain it, just spring up a fully market rate development there, which displaces the folks who are there today. What a voluntary program will likely mean is we'll see affordable development in exchange for the bonuses only in neighborhoods that are in a more difficult position, or sporadically perhaps in other neighborhoods, but it won't have the effect of counteracting this city's long history of class and race segregation. And that's why we don't think that a voluntary program is the right one. In particular, by continuing to include those alternative compliance methods that I mentioned in a voluntary program, I think that really undercuts the intent of this type of initiative, because under the Strassburger proposal, you can pay upfront the payment in lieu, not build any affordable units, but still have access to all of the bonuses, which will increase revenue down the line. So it's basically the value of the tax benefit will be greater than the payment you're putting in the front end. So we have serious concerns with the proposal as her amendment would establish it.
Yeah, and there were a handful of other provisions. It would make all of this effective for only 20 years, again, down from the 99 you originally proposed, the 35 that was part of the compromise. And it would require the city's planning department to create a report detailing whether the program is working. That part I like.
Yeah,
that's been such a big criticism to this whole thing, is that it turns out we actually don't have a great handle on our housing stock generally and our affordable housing specifically.
I think that's fair. And I think, as with all things, insights into the data will always be helpful. I will caution that a 2-year reporting period is not going to tell you much because of the pace at which housing development projects move. These are from beginning to end. Housing projects routinely take 5 years, sometimes longer. So I don't know how effective a 2-year reporting cycle would be. But yes, the other changes that you highlighted are also areas of significant concern.
CityCast Pittsburgh is sponsored by the Frick Pittsburgh Museum and Gardens. They just opened their latest exhibit, The Scandinavian Home, Landscape and Lore. I'm going to be honest, when I first heard that name, my mind jumped straight to IKEA furniture, but there will be no cardboard mountains or Allen wrenches if you visit the Frick. And the exhibit actually includes a lot more than furniture. You're going to get to peek at decor and folk art. Think ceramics, glass, paintings, textiles, sculptures even from Denmark and Norway, Sweden, and Finland. The Scandinavian Home has over 100 never-seen-before items from a private collector. So you'll be transported to a world where the domestic and the mythic meet. There are princesses, trolls, gnomes, a lot of fairy tale magic. It's all just so cozy and perfect for this time of year. The Scandinavian Home, Landscape and Lore is on view through January 11th, 2026. Perfect for your holiday plans. Get your tickets at thefrickpittsburgh.org. Today's episode is sponsored in part by Family House. For families traveling here for medical care, the cost of food is just another expense to worry about. But Family House's daily healthy breakfast program takes away some of that stress, while also providing a little connection. The program's available to all Family House guests, and it provides nourishing meals, a welcoming space, and the chance to meet others facing similar medical challenges. But the cost of this meal program is going up. Family House needs your help. Every donation helps keep breakfast and the support it provides available to those who need it most. You can give at familyhouse.org/donate and save the date for Family House's Day of Giving. It's December 2nd on Giving Tuesday. Family House really is a home away from home for patients and caregivers here in Pittsburgh, and it's the preferred lodging partner for a lot of our healthcare systems here. So again, if you want to support their cause, head over to familyhouse.org/donate. So how do you think this is going to play out? I got to be honest, I am shook that you chose to be here with us today, knowing that this was going down in council at the same time. I'm grateful. Yeah. But what do you expect to hear when you walk out of this room?
I don't know. First of all, I expect to hear that public comment is still going on. But I'm not sure what will happen today. I think that there have been 4 council members who have, hung together in support of a mandatory policy, and I'm very grateful for their support in that, as is the mayor. I think that ultimately there's a very real chance that Councilperson Strassburger's amendment has the 5 votes it needs to move forward today from standing committee. Where that goes next, similarly, is somewhat in council's hands, right? I think a fair reading of the code would tell you that if her amendment is adopted, it's changed the bill enough that it should go back to the Planning Commission for further review, because what it will have essentially created is something much more similar to Councilman Charlin's voluntary program that the Planning Commission rejected than our proposal.
Although Councilman Charlin's bill, like a lot of that Planning Commission debate was about, his had a thing about like letting individual neighborhoods decide, which did seem to really hang up everybody. Like, how in the world were you ever going to figure that out?
I don't disagree that they were not the same proposal. I'm simply saying that the Planning Commission gave an affirmative recommendation to a mandatory proposal, and it rejected a voluntary one, differently designed, but a voluntary one. This amendment would make Mayor Gainey's original proposal into a voluntary program. I think that there's a strong argument that that level of change triggers the requirement in the code to go back to the Planning Commission. But that's ultimately, council makes its own interpretation of that. So they could send it back or they could press forward. I think we'll see that conversation play out today, likely. If the bill amended with Councilperson Strassburger's amendment were to advance and ultimately come to the mayor's desk for signature, he's been clear that he would veto it because of all the ways in which a voluntary program is insufficient and in some ways counterproductive to the goal of growing affordable housing in our city. But we'll see how that plays out.
And I think it's worth underscoring that, like, this is one of the largest things he has chased in his mayoral administration. It has been the subject of so many fights and debates over the last year. This could really be like one of his lasting legacies on the city. And because this is an amendment, it changes his whole proposal.
Yeah.
And now he and you are saying, then we don't want it. We will veto our own thing because this isn't enough of what we had hoped for.
That's right.
That feels wild.
It does, but it is how the system is intended to work, right? I mean, I wish we were in a different place, right? And I hope that folks who are at least paying attention, who are listening to this conversation, will see that we were not unopen to compromise in our proposal in making significant concessions to reach something that a majority of council could agree with that was still mandatory. But a mandatory program really is the deal-breaking line in the sand for us. And so
I was going to ask, like, I mean, if Strassburger came back to you and said, is there any form of a voluntary program we could come to a compromise on, what would you say?
We've had that conversation, and the answer from the beginning was no, which is why we're in the position we're in now.
Okay. Well, if it makes it that far, it takes 6 of 9 council votes to override a mayoral veto. At this moment, it seems like Strassburger has 5. Remains to be seen if anyone else is movable. Jake Pawlak, you leave office very soon. You're coming up at the very beginning of January. So does your boss, Mayor Gainey. Any clue yet what he's going to do next?
No, that's not been something we've been spending a lot of our time on, either individually or collectively. I mean, I'm confident that Mayor Gainey will continue to serve the community outside of elected office in some other fashion.
I've been seeing a lot fewer press conferences and a lot more events. It seems like he's getting out and about quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, right? His entire career has been leadership in the community, right? I mean, and he certainly gets the most of his energy, and I think also gives the most to the public.
He's still a pretty young person. He could go back to Harrisburg.
Well, I think he's pretty happy with the state representative he has now in Representative Mays. So I don't want to speak for him, but we've certainly not had any conversations that make me think he's looking to further elected office, but to some other form of service to the community. And I think that his role, particularly as a leader in Black Pittsburgh, as the city's first Black mayor, will continue for a long time.
What about you? What do you know what's next for you?
I haven't really made any final decisions there. I'm looking forward to a bit of a break.
How long do deputy mayors take a break for?
I'm thinking I'll take January off at least. But no, I haven't made firm plans. Similar to what I just said about the mayor, I still care very deeply about the work that we've done as an administration, and hope to find a way that I can continue to be involved in advocating for some of the same causes that we've fought for outside of government as my next move. But really, I told myself that I would start dedicating serious time to figuring that out after we got the budget introduced and inclusionary zoning came to its conclusion. So I'm due to give that more serious thought to the promise I made myself there. So.
The time is nigh. Job hunts are not fun. Again, don't envy you there.
It's a terrible market. I don't know what I was thinking. So,
Jake Pawlak, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
For what it's worth, Strassburger has her own, somewhat different perspective on how everything went down this summer. Without rehashing the play-by-play, here's what she told me Monday about Gainey's OG proposal.
My fear was that the policy that was originally introduced would have stifled development such that we wouldn't have seen housing development at all in the city. We would have seen 19-unit buildings. We would have seen housing on the outskirts of the city, but not actually inside the city. And I truly think that the amendments that I'm proposing allow for the flexibility to build housing and to build affordability into it, or create a fund that can fund the lowest income level housing possible, and that is the best way forward. But I'm also looking forward to moving beyond this point where we can talk about even harder hitting affordable housing policy.
So at any rate, after we talked to Pawlak, City Council did vote to amend Mayor Gainey's inclusionary zoning bill. That means it's voluntary now, not mandatory, and the Planning Commission has until early next year to consider it. That also means that odds are, assuming he wins his election here in a couple of weeks, Democrat Corey O'Connor is going to get to make the choice. We will, of course, be keeping an eye on what happens next. That is all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Thank you so much to everyone who came out to our member event last night at Iron City Distilling. CityCast Pittsburgh neighbors got to sip some spirits and hang out with us all for free, and I can confirm some numbers were swapped. If you want to check the IC Distilling space out for yourself, they do tours Thursday to Sunday, and you can book your own at icdistilling.com. You can also get exclusive invites to cool hangs around the burg by becoming a CityCast Pittsburgh neighbor. All the details are at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow with more from around the city. We'll talk to you soon. Somebody's singing. Somebody somewhere in the city county building is singing right now.
Yes.